We know that July marked a turning point for the EAC with the launch of the common market. Has it improved efficiencies in the region?
We are just at the start. We've been implementing the customs union since last year, in July, effective beginning January this year. So July 1st this year, we have turned to the common market, where we are providing more freedom of goods, services, capital, and free movement of people, as well as labor and employment across the 5 countries. I'm saying we are just at the starting because the process running will determine the full implementation or the fully fledged common market. And we are looking at a period between 2 and 5 years on the maximum to have the laws changed of each country, to have administrative procedures corrected or realigned to fit within the common market protocol, and also to make sure that the rights, the freedoms are being observed, and especially looking at what the public sector is doing in all the 5 countries.
Okay, some of the concerns that existed and raised by the business community prior to July 1st was that the different EAC member states have different policy regimes around taxation, for instance, different laws, and some are applying the tariffs differently to what the benchmark set by the EAC is. Have these issues been ironed out?
It's not a one-time off. We are doing macro convergence on a number of policy dimensions across the 5 countries. The direction is to have convergence of policies such that the differences are reduced to the bare minimum. We are looking at policies that are supposed to be common to all, and the Council of Ministers is seized of such matters from time to time. So we are dealing with it piecemeal, in the sense that if it's about movement of goods, we identify those policies that may be posing hiccups in terms of variations or divergences between countries, and propose harmony between the countries. So we are doing a number of policy harmonization, legal harmonization, that characterize the common market. I can cite, for example, for you, policies regarding imports and the common external tariff applicable to goods coming in from out of the East African community. Those ones are harmonized. We have a law that binds all the countries to impose same tariff rates, and making sure that where there are waivers, they only limit into the country that seeks to probably fill the gap, especially on foodstuffs. Regarding internal trade, trade between countries, we're harmonizing the domestic taxation, the tax rates, the tax structures, the tax bands. All that is work in progress, and we are in the final stages.
All right. Now, there have been some concerns because we know that the hegemon in the region is Kenya, Uganda growing above 6% and soon to become an oil producer. So there is a bit of fear that with a common market and effectively a blurring of boundaries, you're going to have a situation where Kenyan goods, Ugandan goods, manufacturing from these 2 giant economies will supersede what's happening in other areas and effectively will flood the other 3 member states. How are you dealing with the disparities in economic size and weight?
It is a pessimistic view. There is the optimistic side of it, which we have urged all those commentators and opinion leaders to also consider seriously. I can tell you, for example, that instead of countries looking at competitive advantages that they have against each other, it is possible to look at comparative advantages. Now, it is possible very much to look at what the country can deliver most as compared to others. We are looking at having a plan, an economic plan that put countries together. Talk about energy development, cross-border energy infrastructure, tapping from the easiest possible source in terms of cost effectiveness, investment cost effectiveness, delivering to the rest. Talk about industrialization. Where there is textile industrial development, it doesn't mean others should duplicate, because others can have other subsectors within the industrial sector. The agribusiness, the processing, like the exportation, the air transport, to mention but a few. So what we are emphasizing is a comparative advantage, and we have now a 5 years development strategy for the community, which should be underscoring all those areas, running from 2011 to 2015.
Let's talk about reciprocity and mutual gains amongst the 5 member states. And I know there's talk of Southern Sudan, if it is an independent country by next year, joining as well. This customs union that's been mooted, how are revenues shared? Because in the case of SACU, for instance, you have South Africa as the dominant economy contributing the most. Most of these countries depend heavily on this country for their trade. The stability of their currency and their foreign exchange earnings depend on what's happening in South Africa. And there's been a feeling in South Africa that maybe we need to review that revenue sharing scheme, because this country loses as much as 21 billion to other member states where there isn't mutual benefit. How are you addressing some of those issues?
I think it's not called for. Revenue sharing is a talk that it's like there is a basket of revenues from which the countries have to sit down and begin agreeing on who should take what. But all this is supposed to be driven by what is the country's entitlement in the revenue generation. If it's through taxation, then what the country is entitled to is supposed to be in line with what is the tax regime saying. If it's an importation, even if the tariff is imposed at one port of entry, still if the goods are bound to another country, that is the revenue due to the other country. In today's world, where the information technology is in this advanced stage, we don't even need to collect all those revenues into one basket. It should be wired directly to where it should be. So I don't understand. I will need to check properly and understand how the SACU has to distribute revenues. There is no need for formula, apart from what is purely operational, from one collection point to one central bank, if that is where it has to go.
Okay. Andrew, efficiencies here, we've seen, for instance, KCB with its share issuance, and all of this was happening across the bourses, the trading of these shares. So certainly a common market protocol creating efficiencies for business and for fundraising. Yeah,
sure. I think, as was quite correctly stated, is the focus is on commonalities as opposed to competition within the region. And basically what the advantage of this is leveraging basically a growing population, a young population, good economic growth, and the irony of a setup like this is that actually it self-regulates quite well, as opposed to just individual countries. In the South African context, the SADC, it's debatable as to how well it's done as a concept, but if you look to Southeast Asia, the concept has worked really, really well. So the model does work. It depends on the implementation, the operational sort of aspects of it, but there's certainly merits in the idea, and hopefully it works well.
Well, Mr. MuTabingwa, just a final question to you. I know that part of your portfolio focuses on planning and infrastructure, and that's a big problem across Africa. What is the EAC doing about sorting out this one? You referred to energy sharing earlier on, but roads, for instance, telecoms?
Yeah, we are looking at planning as actually very critical in the integration, in making the 5 countries pursue a common path in the sense that mutual benefits derived from collective efforts registered on the ground. So we are looking at the economic planning of the 5 countries. I mentioned the development strategy. We are now developing the 4th. We've had 3 strategies running through 5 years each. We are also looking at institutional transformation. With this common market, we are definitely going to be more challenged with capacities, with delivery capacities, with coordination, with looking at more areas than we used to. And regarding infrastructure, of course, we all know that the more we can develop the infrastructure, the more we are realizing the target. Now, we are looking at collective efforts to the extent of mobilizing resources, putting them together through an East African Development Fund, and deciding on priority, critical infrastructure investments that we need to have. Energy definitely is one of them. But we are also looking at transport. So in short, those are the areas that we are all considering, and we are making some progress.